good morning, and we're live. And it is a Mindset Monday, and it is Financial Literacy Week. And I'm here with my co-host and radio buddy. How you doing, Vernon? How was your weekend?
Well, where can I start from? I had quite, a wonderful weekend. We were trying to relax, but of course, get a few things done here and there in the company of, interesting people. Let's leave it there.
We don't want to sell you out, but we don't want to sell you out. Today being Mindset Monday and Financial Literacy Week, man. And today we're going to have a conversation about that. It being Mindset Monday, we try and ease up off the numbers just to try and let people kind of just walk into the week, not bash you with news that has hit you over the weekend, get you started with trauma. We try and frame your mind correctly. So today we're going to be talking about two things, Vernon. Ye old statement, and I think people have been seeing me talking about it, is follow your passion. That big old statement, following your passion, what it has done to people, or what some people may, what it may have presented to people, unfortunately, and it is a tricky conversation because following your passion is a deep thing. It's a well intentioned statement. And I just wanted to really get into that and hop into that. But in terms of something I wanted to just give as a thought, in terms of productivity, man, and there has been something I have been sharing also about data to do with youth. So here's a thought. Because whenever we're talking about things like financial literacy, it is something that is dominated by the younger class of Zambians. But even just in terms of productivity, do you know, Ven, and I think this is something that we should all take into consideration as people, is that do you know that 7 out of every 10 young Zambians between the age of 20 and 35, or 34 actually, between the age of 20 and 34, are not actively in the workforce. They are not economically active. I'm not talking about 15 to 19-year-olds who are now back in high school. I'm not talking about many people who are on family duty, because the number of young people who are not in family is a much lower number. The number, Vernon, that we are seeing now is that 7 out of every 10 Zambian youth are literally off the job market. They're not starting businesses, they're not working for themselves, they're not working anywhere, they're not working for anyone, they're not even looking for work. Okay. What are your thoughts on that?
It's it's a conversation I've constantly been having with peers and whatnot. Few couple months. It's this concerning rate and number of young people who are not doing anything, and then you see indirectly and unconsciously this is putting pressure on us because at a time when you probably should be able to at least buy your own clothes, be able to take yourself out, maybe be able to buy yourself a smartphone, all of that pressure, the individual's parents, because there's just so much, economic activity going on. Young people actually have reason to, a statistic of at least 7 of 10 not having to be active doing anything. That means they have no money, they're having any, financial or lucrative activity around them. The only way to be spared and kept and what. And
Sorry
you
about that. That was just me. Yeah.
of
So that, yeah.
capacity. I remember from his particularly on capacity.
Sorry, Vernon. I think you're starting to break a bit here. I think you're
Are you
back
able
now.
to get
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. Now we can. Now we can. We're back. Continue, please. Yeah. I think it's on and
All
off.
right. Yeah, so
All right.
this
So
fine from
yeah.
Nigeria actually, came through to share some of the interesting tips on capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Continue.
seem to have a bit of a network situation
No,
there. I
no,
don't know
no,
if
no.
you're
You're
able to
back
get
on
me.
now. You're back on. Yeah. No, you're back on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so conversations we've been having really. some of the ways were, how Nigerians are doing it, and being able to be and find opportunities and create opportunities by themselves. And their population as compared to ours is almost like quarter to theirs. And there's always something that they're doing to get themselves busy and have a little money back and forth. But in Zambia, I'm not sure what kind of mentality has driven us to this position, to where young people have just but turned out to be just but reluctant, or I mean, there's always a defensive side to it. They're doing something and not. But for me, I feel there is, as tough as the situation could be, there is what you as an individual can do to get your. If you can't do it for others, then do it for yourself. I mean, if I'm broke, I am very
you
unhappy.
see, you
There's just
seem
so you're just
frustrated,
quite
Vernon.
limited. You know, Absolutely.
This seems
So
to
at least if you can't
frustrate
do it
you.
for others, do it for yourself. Who
Mm.
who likes body? So find a way. If it means cleaning a car, Mutwale, that'll earn you 20 kwacha on one vehicle. Do it. You can clean 5 more cars. You know that you have something for tomorrow and lunch. And if you do that, you grow more money, cumulatively. You will not be broke. But then I don't know if we're waiting for those comfortable jobs, 8 5, we'll be getting 7,000. I'm not sure where young people's minds are that they are let west. And I remember passing through town, a well-boarded man like myself is asking me to kwacha. And I'm like, I'm gonna give you, but I'm unhappy and I'm upset because you equal yourself. Forget about exposure. You can do something equal and earn as much as I'm earning. The fact is that you have the ability, you are physically fit enough, you are physically fit enough to do it. Then just roll, work for the money. That's what
Right.
and life
I
want.
think we're going through something again. Yeah.
That's just so.
Yeah.
There's a lot they have got to do, at least for
Sorry about that, Vernon. It appears that we just unfortunately had an unlucky streak with you right there at the end. But I get what you're saying. You are making the point. You're making a very valid point that look, people need to start figuring out what to do instead of waiting for someone to present them with a solution. Because it is putting a lot of pressure. And let me actually share this with you, Vernon, so that you can see it from the perspective I'm actually giving it. This is a chart, a set of charts that I put together with 4 charts in what we call a nice quad. I always work hard to present these things for you people. So take a look, and read them and weep. What you're seeing on the left, on the top left corner, is the amount that the government is spending in terms of the government's budget. This is the amount of money that the government is spending if you were to distribute it per household. You can see that between the years of 2012 and 2023, the government has tripled the amount that it's basically spending per household. Okay, so in other words, these are government services, government expenditures. The government is basically spending 3 times more than it used to per household or per Zambian household. Now, if you start to also look at it from the perspective of the one below that, those are called labor force participation rates. And these are charts that we've gathered from the labor force surveys with extrapolations done of the in between years. And here's what we found, Vernon. Those are the statistics, those are the shocking statistics of the number of people per age group that are actually participating in the labor force. Now, if you take a look very carefully at this, and let me try and zoom in on this section for you all, so that you can see how heartbreaking and shocking this actually is. This bottom part here, which says labor force rates, this is the, as I said, the labor force participation of people between the age of 20 to 35 and the people between the age of 20 to 64. The dark green line at the top shows that 35% of people between 20 to 64 are in the labor force. And these aren't even people, Vernon, who are not retired or anything. They're just not doing anything. And then if you're looking at the young people, it's even worse. So some could have said maybe it's the older generation who are leaving the workforce. Then why are the young people having worse labor force participation? We used to have, Vernon, 52% of young people actively seeking some form of work or actively participating in the labor markets. Now we just have nothing. We're down to an estimated 29.5% of young people. This is estimated for 2023. But what we're looking at in terms of 2021, that is a dangerous number. And my concern is, are we spending people out of working? So let me even break it down for you for this chart here. This chart here shows you what we see in terms of Zambian youth. Vernon, I don't know if is it visible to you? So this is sorry. I think we've lost Vernon for a bit. So this is the Zambian youth in terms of the people aged 20 to 35, not the people in school, and they're not in university. You can't even give me that one because in Zambia there are only 100,000 people across every tertiary institution, be it diploma holding, certificate, anything. There's only 100,000 people who are in full-time education, or at least some sort of part-time education, who are signed up to tertiary institutions. So that means that from that population of 20 to 35, there are about 4 million people. So that's less than 3% of that population. So it's not school, it's not tertiary education that's taking them out. This is just non-labor force participation. So if you take a look at the breakdown, the brown part, which is the top part, which is the biggest chunk, is the group of people who are just economically inactive. And you can see from 2012 all the way up to now, the economically inactive population, especially of young Zambians, has increased drastically from 45% to 62% of people who are just plain economically inactive. Now, they are what we call discouraged. Those who have been seeking, but for a period of time and have failed to find anything, those have gone from 4% to 12% between the years of 2012 all the way to 2023. The people who are at least unemployed, you can even see the unemployment numbers have even shrunk in terms of the percentage of younger people. That's gone from 8% to 6%. Okay, so we're not struggling with an unemployment problem, Vernon. We're struggling with an economic inactive problem. Okay, and the majority of the people who are not working are just plain old economically inactive. They're not even discouraged. They're just economically inactive. Okay, now, yes, we can point at women who got married very young and they're trying to set up families because unfortunately we had a child bride situation. We had a child bride situation. We had all sorts of a problem. But this chart here, Vernon, is actually breaking down the issue. Now, if you're looking at the informal sector, this is where the problem has come. A lot of people have exited the informal sector and have entered the economically inactive sector. So we've gone from 32% of people operating in the informal sector down to about 10%. Like the informal sector is actually shrinking and it's turning into the economically inactive. So people who are in the informal sector for a prolonged period of time are either going on some sort of government programs because this is lining up with government spending. Okay, see, the more, and you can see it on the left, the more the government is spending, the more people seem to be exiting the labor force and going into economic inactivity. So, one, we are not creating enough jobs fast enough. Okay, just remember this, and I keep telling everybody this. Remember, Vernon, there are almost 500,000 people entering the labor force every single year. Okay, there are 500,000 people entering the workforce in terms of in terms of age. Let me not say entering the labor force, but there are 500,000 people becoming working age every single year. So this statistic shows that one of the biggest problems, and I remember Vusi Temukwaya having this conversation with a friend of his, and he was saying one of the biggest problems of Africa is we've created an economy that cannot absorb labor. Okay, the first step of an economy, of any business activity happening in the economy, is one, to serve the needs of the consumer. And secondly, right then and there, it's not to pay taxes, it's not to do anything, it's to absorb labor. Okay? I think this is where we've created businesses as if they're conduits for paying taxes. No, they're not. Okay, they pay taxes, yes, because that is something that has to be done because of public services. But the first priority of a business is to hire people because unemployed people are dangerous to society, especially, Vernon, especially unemployed young men. Okay, they're suicidal at higher rates, they drink at higher rates, there's violence and crime that comes in at higher rates. Look at any country, the moment you start to see young men going into higher levels of unemployment, just take a look at the crime rates. Just do me a favor and take a look at the crime rates. In fact, have the crime rates not spiked over the last decade, as we're showing you that people have even left the informal sector? If people are economically inactive, what do you think they're doing for a living? What do you think they're doing for food? Okay, they're aggressing upon each other. They have to break into homes. They have to steal things. They have to become cadres now. Because we have created a system where, one, it's almost impossible to start a business. This is problem number one. We've made it almost impossible to start businesses, and we've only allowed those with huge pockets to try and start businesses. And we've made it very difficult for people to grow their businesses because we've empowered so much of the regulatory framework of this country to create so many laws, so many rules, so many edicts, so much red tape. We have created so much of that so that the small businesses cannot hire. So, who's the first solution to this problem? It is the small business, Vernon. That is the first reaction you always have to remember. Because 77% of your employment, or 70%, sorry, of your employment is done by small businesses. You know, I know this, Vernon. You're sitting in one. You're sitting in a medium enterprise that has been run by a family in Zambia that has created it. That is how employment works. It is people who bring their resources together and start businesses. It is a family that saw an opening in a country that needed financial literacy media, and therefore now has hired some young people as reporters, has hired some young people as background staff and presenters, and that is job creation happening. Okay. Now, how many more of these can we replicate to make it easier for as many more Zambians to get jobs? Because that is how we get this to work, right? Yes, the entrepreneurship base is growing. The employer base, that is the one good thing that has happened, by the way, in the last decade. The employer base of Zambia has grown drastically. We've grown from 15,000 people who are employers to 210,000 people who are employers over the last 10 years. That's at least that's some very good change, but it appears it's not fast enough because, like I said, you have 500,000 people entering the labor force on an annual basis in terms of the age that they're turning, and then on top of that, you've got a group of people who, because you've got about 2 million people between the age of 15 and 19, and every year, Vernon, 500,000 people are turning 20. In other words, they cannot be in high school anymore. They need to get out there and start working. So you got 500,000 people turning 20, actively looking for work, trying to start their independent lives. Okay, but you got a country that's that's creating less than 100,000 formal sector jobs a year, right? So already this is the mismatch. This is the problem, right? 500,000 people, and you're only creating 100,000 new jobs a year. Where are those other 400,000 going to get economic activity from? So the first step is we need to make it much easier to set up and grow your businesses. So obviously the access to capital question is the one that's been problematic, but we do need to become more growth centric, even growth minded with our businesses. I know a lot of businesses, Vernon, who live their lives just looking for capital. Okay, people are just out there in the market always looking for capital, looking for loans, looking for this, but barely selling, barely figuring out customer problems to solve. So we need to, one, shift the mindset of the people who are actually operating businesses to be cash flow centric. And two, we need to create a system where it's easier for a person to start a business. It should be as easy, Vernon, to register a business as it is to open a Facebook account. Okay, that's how easy it should be, because it's a need, it's a necessity. Okay, and to get people to do it and training people for entrepreneurship should actually be a real priority now. How do you get as many people to become the commercial farmers that we need to increase our output? Instead of putting people in farmer input support programs, how do we start training commercial farmers so that they can start hiring the people who would go into farmer input support programs and hire them as farm workers, as opposed to training people to sit and be on some government farming scheme? That thing is a nightmare in terms of what it's done. In terms of, I know that yes, people will say no, farmer output has gone. Yes, but no, but people are not there by choice. It's always some. You know what I hate about the people who support these poverty programs, and I know I'm using very strong language, is it's people themselves who know they would never touch those poverty programs. I ask people who always say, "No, these poverty programs are essential." The people who are on those, I understand. It's a really tough swing. Okay, it's really a tough situation. But you know what they need more than a poverty program, Vernon? They need a job. That's what they need. You need to put more attention into creating an environment for people to create jobs. In fact, not even creating an environment, creating a mindset. Okay, it's not even the environment anymore. It's the way we're thinking. We need to create a mindset for people to start creating more jobs in this country through business creation. Business formation is the sole thing that we should be focusing on. And I always ask these people who are on these poverty programs. One of the things I've noticed, Vernon, is they're never broke themselves. They always drive. They always live in a fancy place. They're always richer than most people. They travel a lot. Okay, themselves, they'll never be on a poverty program themselves. Okay, Nobody who's on a poverty program, nobody who's a poverty program administrator will ever be on a poverty program themselves. They'll sooner eat dirt than get on those things themselves. But they want to subject the rest of the nation to them instead of working on business formation. Okay, I'm not saying it's a one or the other, but the biggest, the most important thing we should be working on, Vernon, is getting people off poverty programs and into jobs. That's the transition we should be working on, not being celebrating the amount of people that were stuffing into these things as if it's an achievement. It's not. We cannot be celebrating. It's a sad thing that we have to put so many people on welfare. It's actually sad, and we have to change that. Anyway, so that's the that's the point I'm going to leave it at, because unfortunately, this is not good for society. So today, Vernon, and I don't know if you're with me right now, but today, Vernon, we're going to be talking about the conversation of following your passion. And to everyone who's with us today, I'm going to be talking about something called career capital, and I'm going to be talking about it this week because career capital, or your working capital as a person. And whenever people say working capital, you're thinking about the amount of cash that your business is holding. Actually, what I'm talking about in terms of your working capital, I'm talking about your value as either an entrepreneur, your value as an employee. What is it about you? So today I'm going to be referencing a book called Be So Good They Cannot Ignore You. It was written by Cal Newport. He was trying to write a book about how he was going to develop a career that was going to guide him. He was trying to research a book on how he was going to develop a career that was going to guide him to be able to actually make the decision about creating a passionate career. So he studied people who created passionate careers, and he made a few discoveries, especially for his own advice to be able to build his own frame. And the first thing he addresses is this thing of follow your passion. He had to ask himself, was he supposed to create a career in passion, or was he supposed to create a career in proficiency? And he was trying to figure out what were the main criteria of people who created businesses where they seemed very passionate, or created work and jobs where they seemed so passionate about what they were doing. And what he had discovered was that follow your passion may not be the advice that people should have been getting. Though it seems well-intentioned, what it has created is the retardation of a lot of people's careers, where people unfortunately have been dragged backwards in the work that they've been doing because they've been in the pursuit of passion instead of the pursuit of excellence. And one of the things I think he does point out here is that people need to start pursuing excellence in the fields that they are in and leveraging that excellence for the career that they want. And that requires a lot of personal work, training, deliberate practice, knowledge capital. So I'm going to talk about a 3-step process that we should actually be following here. One is the accumulation of knowledge capital, the conversion of knowledge capital into career capital, and the conversion of career capital into financial capital. And financial capital or business capital. And on Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be talking about that conversion point of career capital into financial capital on Tuesday. And on Thursday, we're going to be talking about career capital converted into business capital. And a lot of it boils down to this. We can talk about financial literacy, assets, financial products that you can invest in, and savings products and all these things, but none of it means anything if you do not make money. Okay? The first step to being wealthy is to make money. That's it. Okay, you can't invest money you don't have. You can't save money you don't have. You can't grow money you don't have. You can't transfer money you don't have. You first have to make it in order to do anything with it. So we have to first talk about the make money equation. The make money equation is boiled down to this. It is your proficiencies that people will pay for. Your passion about how you do your work is going to give you the energy to do it well. But they're going to come to you because you do something that they need, and they're going to select you out of other people or many options because of the way that you do it. So I just wanted to put those factors together for you. That it is. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the videos. I'm gonna put these as a series of videos that we're going to be sharing quickly regarding this conversation. And this was a lecture that he was doing when he was talking about his book about career capital. So here's a conversation about follow your passion.
Concept. If you look at this idea, follow your passion objectively, we see that it's a sort of astonishingly appealing concept. The problem is that follow your passion, in addition to being astonishingly appealing, also happens to be astonishingly bad advice. If your goal is to end up passionate about what you do for a living. Follow your passion, first of all, claims that most of us have pre-existing passions we can follow. In order to follow a passion, everyone has to have my passion. Follow your passion relies on this idea that we have pre-existing passions that for some reason are well suited to a modern knowledge work economy, and that we just have to apply those. We don't have evidence that that's the case. It doesn't match the stories we find in reality, and we don't have a lot of support for it. What are people doing that do end up loving what they do? I did find a pattern that shows up pretty often. The specifics of the work is not what's important. There's almost always some general lifestyle traits. Maybe you want autonomy, power and respect, and impact, creative. But this is what matters in someone feeling a real sense of satisfaction and engagement in their career. They start by building up rare and valuable skills. They use skills as leverage in the general traits that matter to them. And that's why they care less about what specific job they do and care a lot more about how they're approaching the job they have. Am I building skills? Have I plateaued? How can I continue those skills? In the book, I call it career capital. How big is my career capital store? If I want to enjoy my working life more, maybe I should look at increasing that store faster.
All right, so let me now get back to what he's saying here. And unfortunately, especially in the motivation crowd, sometimes this one doesn't sit well. But in fact, a lot of the people who are now trying to speak to people and influence are actually being very honest about this conversation of late, and I actually have to applaud them for that. The conversation about following your passion is this, Vernon. You're not going to be passionate about a specific career in terms of the work it gives you, but you are going to be passionate about the features of that job. Does it give you opportunities for recognition? Does it give you freedom for creativity? So there are features of the job that you're actually passionate about and not the actual work itself. Now, in order to be able to acquire that job that'll give you the features that you're looking, what Cal Newport actually discovered was that many people built up such considerable skills and proficiencies. They built up such strong either know-how or know-who. That is what your career capital is. It is what you know and who you know. They built up very strong networks of people. They built up a very strong reputation. They built this stuff up very well to the point where now they could leverage what they want. They could either leverage it by forming a business because they had such a strong name in society, or they could leverage it through their work and demand the terms that they wanted, okay? Because of their brand name. So what you should actually be building as an individual is finding what you're good at, okay? And this is what he stresses a lot. Find what you're good at. Practice to improve deliberately, consistently for many years, for close to about 5 to 10 years, till you get to the elevated point of your field. Because what he found about people who are passionate about their careers, many people seem to skip this, is they often seem to be at the top of their fields. Okay? Has no one ever noticed that the person who's the worst at their career is not the person who's the most passionate? It's the people who are at the top of the fields who are the most passionate, because they also happen to be the best at what they're doing. Okay? So if you're in your 20s, maybe the career advice should be figure out what you're good at. What do you have? What are you good at? Maybe start with what you're interested in and try and see if you can improve at that. Where do you see yourself with your months of practice that you can put in terms of years of practice that you are putting in? Where do you see yourself naturally being gifted? I think people know what they're good at, regardless of how you feel about it. What are you naturally good at is what you need to start to look at. Where do your talents fit in? If you are a naturally gifted speaker or something, which roles? Is it sales? Is it what are the keys? Is it sales, radio presenting? What are the things that actually work with naturally gifted speakers? And then start applying that gift into those areas. So you must look at where your natural proclivities are. What are these things? And then try and see the two things he says, which are very, very important, Vernon, is one, you must build it to a point where it's rare, and two, where it's highly valuable. Because someone, Vernon, has to want to pay for this. You don't just do it because you like doing it. You do it because if you do it and nobody wants to pay for it, that's called a hobby. Okay? If you're doing it and somebody wants to pay for it, that is a proficiency. So you have to try and make sure you separate the two. But how do you get, Vernon, from once you've discovered that? And he points out something called deliberate practice. I'm going to share this part here for most people. And this is what you should be doing in your
20 hours
20s.
to become great surgeons is very uncomfortable. Right? I mean, deliberate practice, like a surgeon would do to get better at surgery, they require 10,000 hours to become great surgeons, is very, very uncomfortable. You have to stretch yourself. You have to be systematic about, here's where I'm weak, and I'm going to have to do what I don't like doing to get better at it. Most people in knowledge work don't do that. We avoid discomfort. We use email to get away from any sort of mental discomfort of something focused. So I conjecture that in knowledge work fields, if you put systematic, deliberate practice into what you do, you're going to find separation from your peers well south of 10,000 hours. There are. In fact, I have a chapter in the book where I take two particular high performers, a venture capitalist and a television writer, and I tried to understand how they apply deliberate practice in their work right now and how they used it to get where they were. And there's tips like the venture capitalist actually uses a spreadsheet to track his time, and in particular to track his email time. And he had these well-chosen goals for how much time he should be spending on email because he wasn't getting much value out of there as compared to actually vetting deals. And he would track his time daily to make sure that he hit his numbers. Because he was tracking it, it forced him to check much less often in the batch because he had particular numbers that he was trying to hit, and that helped him become more efficient. The television writer, similarly, his whole thing was that he was very clear on what good meant. He had a whole group of sort of collaborators and advisors that could look at his scripts and say what was bad with them. And he wrote a sort of intense amount of writing. He was working on 4 or 5 projects at a time when he was trying to break in and getting intense feedback on them, which is another piece of deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice. How does deliberate practice work? It's pretty simple. There are 2 components to deliberate practice: action and feedback. If you wanted to improve your weightlifting form, you could film yourself lifting and then compare it to the footage of a professional. The goal is to take action and then get feedback by comparing your action to the ideal action. Or in other words, take action and compare your action to those of someone who's more skilled at what you do. Alternatively, instead of filming yourself, you could have a coach, and the coach has an understanding of the ideal, and so he or she gives you feedback to help you move closer to it.
All right, so finally, I think that was the last one I wanted to just show for today, because there are multiple conversations on career capital which we're going to be going through tomorrow, especially for people, because make money is a very important part before we start talking about saving money and everything. And why it's an important conversation when it comes to career capital development is, one, the first thing I'll tell you is from personal experience. And I think I wrote this out. I think many of you have seen it. If not, I've put it out there. It's personal experience. I have felt the impact of passion pursuit and what that does, unfortunately, to a lot of people. And what the common story has always been. You always find people who go through a period of career retardation because they're pursuing excitement in their work as opposed to pursuing excellence, as opposed to finding something, becoming excellent at it. Even Patrick Bet-David said the same thing. Give yourself to an industry for 10 years or more. Said for 15 years. Give yourself to an industry for 15 years. And by the time, if you do and if you persist with it, you'll probably rise to the top, and that will open up a lot more doors. So the most of the younger population, what you need to be doing, especially between that age, is what is your talent? And then try and then figure out who is at the top of your field or who can coach you, because that's your next step. You need to study your talent. You need to study your craft, because Booker T. Washington explains it very simply. Read first. Acquire the knowledge of your skill. Okay, then start to get mentored in it. Either get mentored in it or follow somebody who is very great in it so that they can lead you to what to do at the top, and realize what skills does that person at the top have. Because when you get into an industry, you are blind. You have no idea what the skills required to be at the top are. But if you can somehow chronicle the people, get the books of the people, whatever it is, and even if they're not local, because I know people say, well, get someone who's local. Unfortunately, we don't have much documentation of the people who are local. But if you can get somebody who's local to try and help you, that's a good idea. And if you can't, get somebody who's general in terms of international. And then see what you can do about building a proficiency that person has, and start to build those proficiencies very well. And once you start to do that, you're now improving yourself and improving your market value. Now it's about making sure that it has value to society. Is this something that people need, something that they're willing to pay for, something that they're willing to buy? And therefore, it starts to speak as to whether you're going into a career path where you're going into the job market, or professional path, let me say, or you're going into the entrepreneurship path. These are 2 different paths that at least are now open to you once you start learning how to work on a gift that is valuable to people. That is the key point here. It has to be something that people want to buy. So one, study your markets. Look at what people need. And two, study yourself. Look at what you have. Look for the intersection between what people need and what you have in terms of your gifts and abilities, and find the best out of those things that you have, which is the fastest growing out of the things that people need, and be able to start looking at how to sharpen that. Okay, whichever one out of the things that people have. Okay, here's a simple task I want as many of you to do. Write this one down if you can. One, list the inventory of things that you are good at. Okay, now ask yourself about the things that you are good at. What are the needs in society associated to those things that you are good at, those skills you are good at? Okay, then the next thing you want to ask is, out of those needs in society, are they trending upwards or are they trending downwards? In other words, are they growing fast or are they shrinking? Be honest with yourself and study your market. Now, out of the things that you are good at, list them from one to whatever number in terms of the skills. You really just want to look at top 5 things you're really good at. And now go down the ranks. Which of them has a fast growing market that's attached to it? And if you start with number 1, number 2, number 3, whichever one of them is the first one that gives you that, you pick up that axe and you sharpen it. And you sharpen the axe in 2 ways. You sharpen the axe by getting mentored by somebody else. You're either led by somebody who becomes an icon to you that you can sharpen your axe according to, or you can get someone to mentor you who's either going to be a manager, who's either going to be if you're a mechanic, you're going to work as an apprentice mechanic. So whatever it is, there's always somebody who's going to be able to lead you and guide you, who's been in this industry for a longer time, who has a brand name, and therefore you get to learn and mimic what they are doing in the industry. That's one. And then the second thing you need to start doing to sharpen your axe is you need to network, okay? So you need to be able to network around people and meet people so that you understand the dynamics of what's happening in your industry. And there were actually 3 things. 3, you must practice. You must put in hours and hours and hours of practice. And deliberate practice is different to just putting in blind practice. Deliberate practice is actually working on the places of your weakness and sharpening those areas consistently. Because usually when you're sharpening an axe, you're not sharpening the sharp areas, you're sharpening the blunt areas. Okay, so where in your skill and proficiency are you blunt? Okay, and if you focus on doing that while executing the talent, and you're going to start poorly, but then you're focusing on getting better and better and better and better and better over time, you're going to build a customer base. You're going to build a skill which is going to be useful to many people, which are going to be willing to pay for. They're going to tell other people about it. Therefore, you're going to get a growing number of people. You're going to get a reputation. You're going to get connections. You're going to get multiple things. Focus on your skill. I tell you this from personal experience. Do not start flying about the handle trying to look for things that excite you all the time. You are going to lose your mind on those things, and you're going to lose a lot of years doing that. Focus on what you are good at. Focus. 20 to 35 are years where you should be focusing on your proficiency and looking for openings to exercise that proficiency. Now, I know I lost Vernon for a bit. That's something we'll talk about. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the work side of financial literacy, because I know a lot of people like to talk about the products and the saving side. I know I understand that, but we're going to be talking about the work side, because it's no good looking for financial products if you have no finances to speak of in the first place. And with that, I'd like to see any of our comments that have joined us. Thank you very much to everybody who has been with us. Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, Lubinda. And have a great day to everyone. You want to join us tomorrow as we're going to be talking about building career capital and how career capital converts into financial capital and how to be able to utilize that and why that's extremely important. With all, I wish you a wonderful day. God bless.